Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing the S.H.Figuarts Chainsaw Man from the series Chainsaw Man. So this is Chainsaw Man Denji. It is a purely transformed form Denji figure. Unlike the upcoming Figma, or whenever this video comes out, the Figma may even be out. Unlike the Figma, the S.H.Figuarts is purely just the transformed Denji form, so there aren't a whole lot of accessories for this figure, but what Tamashii Nations have tried to do is advertise the figure at a cheaper price point with incredible articulation and great detail to sort of warrant this figure existing, even though they have also announced just a normal Denji coming out, but we don't really have any information for that one right now, just beyond it existing. So like pretty much every other S.H.Figuarts, on the front we've got the figure as well as a main splash promo image. This is laid out a little bit different to the Dragon Ball figures, just because all the Dragon Ball figures have a very sort of uniform style, similar to the Naruto figures having a uniform style, but other franchises like Chainsaw Man have got a little bit of a different style. So turning around on the side, you can see another promo image, which is a full shot of Denji. On the back, a bunch of different promo images of what this figure should be able to achieve, which is some pretty insane articulation, even considering the very wild character design, just because of the massive chainsaw on the head and on the arms, just because they can get in the way of things, so it's nice to see that we can get some good poses. Then on the other side we've got the character's name as well as a small window into the figure. If you open up the side flap, it fills out the entire promo image on the front, which looks really nice, really dynamic. A lot of splatters of colour, almost like the end of a Splatoon stage. And inside we have the figure with, let's be honest, not many accessories. So you can see out of the box we've got the main figure, as well as an alternate face piece, which is actually cool, which we will get to eventually, an alternate tie piece, as well as two other sets of hands, which are closed fists and just relaxed open hands. And the way you attach hands is very unique for this figure as well, but we'll get into that in due time. So start off by taking him out of the shell. So here's Denji just stood up and taken out of the box, and he looks pretty damn accurate. There are some slight proportional changes just to make the figure work, like I believe his shoes are just a bit bigger than normal, but generally I don't think it's going to really affect anything with this figure. The colours look good, the sculpt looks nice. There are some very obvious joint cuts on this figure, but it's all in service of a pretty damn incredibly posable toy. So first up we'll be looking at the sculpt, and starting at the head, and my goodness, this face sculpt is fantastic. They've really nailed Denji. There are quite a few figures where they don't paint in his eyes, which is a bit of a shame, and sometimes when they do, they don't look the best. Like, I really love the Luminasta Chainsaw Man figure, but those eyes, depending on the angle you're looking at, look literally just like a sticker thrown under the figure, which is most likely what it was, is probably a decal. These eyes, however, look really good, really nice from all angles, and they're also a little bit subtle, which I like. The actual chainsaw coming out of his head looks fantastic as well. It's got a nice metallic sheen to it, as well as a decent splattering of blood just to give it that little extra effect, something that a lot of figures for Chainsaw Man don't do either, as well as something that the Figma does not do. We've also got some cleanly, nicely painted teeth, and the whole finish on the head is quite nice. There's a gunmetal grey for the back of the head, as well as sort of a softer grey for the rest of the head, which is pretty accurate. There's some nice shading on the shirt. I don't know if that comes through on camera, but it is. The shirt does have some sculpt work, like the sort of buttons and the pocket. They look okay. There's a lot of ruffles throughout the shirt as well, and some weird joint cuts. They look really weird when you just look at the joints, but trust me, it's worth it. The hands look nice and sort of dynamic. The pants are just, pants, but yeah, they serve their purpose. Denji's shoes look really nice. They're just like bulky and awkward and funny. The chainsaws on his arms look fantastic. The whole inner working of getting this chainsaw to work and not look weird on his arm is just fantastic. Just because you've pretty much divided a hand fully, or divided an arm fully, and you have to have swappable hands on top of that, which is weird. And the chainsaws actually do have a defined endpoint. They don't just sort of generate at some point on the forearm. They are just like almost like a plank of chainsaw. So they come out from the back of the arm as well, and they have detailed that too. There's also some blood detail on those too, which is really good. Paint-wise, there is not much here, much like a lot of the other S.H.Figuarts lately. They're focusing more on the playability aspect and sort of skipping out on a lot of paint apps for generally what would make a better figure, but it does feel cheaper by comparison because of that. But what paint apps we do have are quite nice. It is probably one of the better painted figures lately, just because they needed to paint the chainsaws, the head, as well as shade the figure and detail up his shoes. The shoes do look a tiny bit messy in terms of like there's not a lot of defined heavy detail in it, but I think that's fine. And generally, yeah, he looks like Chainsaw Man. Before we go any further, I will do a quick size comparison. So here he is next to the Pop-Up Parade Cammy. Pop-Up Parades are around 110 scale, not exactly, but that's roughly where they sit. So she is bigger than Chainsaw Man, who is a 112 scale figure. Next to the HG Gundam Ariel, which is 144 scale, which sits around 112 scale. So you can see they're about the same height. And a WCF figure, which is Nico Robin. So you can see that he will scale pretty well with any Figma, S.H.Figuarts, Marfex, anything like that that's roughly around that scale. It should work just fine. So next up we'll go through posability, and you'll also come across a few problems that I have with this figure. So first thing, when you try and move the head, it is pretty easy to knock off the faceplate. If you move the head down too much or sort of off to the side too much, it will knock off the faceplate. It is easy to knock off, but it is also very easy to put back in. But otherwise there is a ball joint at the base of the head as well as the neck, so you can look up that far and down that far. Just need to be cautious of that faceplate falling out. But generally it's a really good range of motion. Just a little bit annoying with how frequently that part can come out, but if you're careful with it, it's fine. It's a minor issue, but it is an issue nonetheless. The arm can move out to the side that far, can bend that far. There is a double bend at the elbow, so it can get a bit more than 90 degrees, which is really cool. There's a ball joint at the upper arm as well as a swivel at the upper arm. They are two different parts, which allows for some crazy dynamic range, and it's sort of there in service of the chainsaw not getting in the way of anything. And we've got this other joint in the top of the arm that allows for a crazy butterfly, as well as a cool swing backwards, and you can get it to swing the arm up, as well as a few other dynamic poses, which is great. There's a ball joint in the upper arm, in the upper torso, which allows for an ab crunch and swivel. I'm just going to take out the tie so it doesn't get in the way. It doesn't really get in the way, but it's more for you guys to see it. So you can look down that far just because of the ab crunch, and look up that far because of the crunch. There's a floating sort of middle body piece, and there's a ball joint at the waist, which allows for more rotation and movement. And it is a bit annoying trying to get the shirt to line up with everything, and you can make the figure look really weird really quickly. But overall, I think it's fine. You can kick up that far and back that far, which is quite good, seeing as he does have a sculpted butt. He can bend his knees that far, which is nice. And he can kick out that far for the splits, which looks good too. There's a swivel at the upper thigh, as well as a ball hinge, I believe, at the ankles, which allows for really cool pivots and bends, as well as a toe bend, which I don't know how useful it is just because of the structure of the shoes, but it's still there. So yeah, pretty good range of motion. There's a reason why there are so many joint cuts. and it does make for a very good figure. So in terms of accessories, you've got the basic face that we've got here, which is just teeth in a neutral position, and you can swap it out for the open mouth face, which is used for action poses or sort of like whatever you want, really. And the cool thing about it is you have a posable tongue. It's on a sort of like, I think it's a ball joint. It feels like a ball joint. And basically you can just lift it up a bit, you can rotate it around, and it just gives so much more expression to this figure. You might only have 2 face plates, but one of those face plates you can change, and it's really, really important. You also get swappable ties, so there's just the standard non-action pose tie, and you can swap it out for a windswept tie, and that's just really good for action poses. Even it is a little bit unfortunate that it only goes one way, but I don't think that that's really much of an issue either. And the other thing is you can swap the hands, and they swap very differently to any other S.H.Figuarts. Basically, there's a clip sort of thing in the middle of the hands, and you just split them apart, and you just reassemble them in different configurations on the actual chainsaw. It is pretty easy to lose them, which is annoying because halfway through filming I lost one of the hands because it wasn't a very tight fit. But yeah, they just split down the middle and you just slot them in and out. And that's how they were able to get that to work, which I believe is also how the Katana Man figure will work, so that's interesting. I'm just going to chuck up a bunch of poses that you can get Denji into just for an idea of what this articulation can achieve. This is just me playing around with it for like 5-10 minutes, and it was just easy to get him into all of these poses. And nothing really felt forced at all while I was doing this. Just a really, really good figure. Shows off a lot more detail, like sculpt work and paint work on the bottom of his shoes. And just, it makes the slightly weird proportions of the figure look quite natural. He could probably pose almost as well as any of the Spider-Man figures, which is great, again, because like you've got a massive chainsaw on your head and on your arms. You would think that would limit the figure, but not really at all. They used that as an opportunity to make a way cooler figure. But using the action pose tie with the action pose mouth, and the standard tie and the standard mouth in different configurations, you can get a pretty expressive figure, which is really good. And again, he's just fun to play with, and I just enjoy this figure. I do like that it wasn't super expensive and that it has blood on the chainsaws. Again, I will never pass up an opportunity to get annoyed at Figma, because I used to go all in on Figma and I used to defend them so heavily. But the stuff they've been doing in the last few years, just the higher price points, the lower quality, it's just not really that cool. Like the Figma Denji has a lot going for it just because of accessories and interchangeable parts, but he has no blood on the chainsaws and the color palette is weird, just something seems off about it. From what I've seen of the Nanami Figma, it just seems weird. I don't know what they're doing anymore. And then S.H.Figuarts comes out with this, releases it earlier at a cheaper price point. Sure, it's lacking some stuff, but the accuracy to the character is there, and I think that is way more important than a figure that can have Denji normal or comes with Pochita or comes with a little axe. I think being true to the character is way, way, way more important, and I think that's what Figuarts are trying to do here. They're trying to be very true to that character. And yeah, it's just a rock solid figure. Just really, really enjoy playing around with it. It's nothing too crazy, let's be honest, but I don't think it needs to be. It just needs to be really highly articulated, really well made, and a really good sculpt, and that's exactly what we got. Figma tend to reuse a lot of joint structure and like parts and things like that, and S.H.Figuarts are very guilty of that as well. Like, look at 90% of the Dragon Ball line. Once we got that 2.0 body, we milked the crap out of it. But that didn't mean that 2.0 wasn't good or anything like that. It's just that they used it a lot, and Figma uses their body types a lot. But this would have been an opportunity for them to cash it in as well and just make something simple. But Figuarts didn't do that. They made one of the more highly articulated Figuarts ever with a brand new sculpt. and I think that is fantastic. Granted, the Denji normal that we'll be getting at some point will probably share almost exactly the same parts as this one. There might be some slight quality of life changes and things like that, but it's going to be like a one-to-one, pretty much straight copy, besides like the forearms. And weirdly enough, I'm okay with that as well. Like, I think I'm willing to forgive a lot more just because this figure is of a cheaper price point and is as good as it is. And it gives you options, because you don't need to buy the regular Denji. You can just get the chainsaw, or you don't need to get the chainsaw, you can just get regular Denji. Granted, some people would like the option to swap between the two, and that's why Figma's there. But I think that this works pretty well. A lot of people probably just want Chainsaw Denji, so they'll go out and just grab Chainsaw Denji. So I think that's perfectly fine in and of itself too. But overall, yeah, really good figure, really enjoyed it. I hope to look at more S.H.Figuarts as they release, and go through the massive backlog that I have that is catalogued on this channel with all my unboxings. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that video, and I will see you all next time.